Today on Toypixx, recreating 3 pieces of Jim Lee artwork using the Medicom MAFEX Hush Batman. Plus a 4th bonus image with a special guest star. Okay, that special guest star is, another action figure. This is Jim Lee, one of the most well-known comic book artists of all time. And one of yours truly's personal favorites. He became crazy popular during his run on the Uncanny X-Men, and as the penciler was part of a team that produced X-Men Volume 2 Number 1, which to this day is the highest selling comic book of all time. And yes, friends, that was 1991. Lee is currently the chief creative officer and publisher at DC Comics, but before that, he penciled Batman Hush, which Medicom MAFEX has dedicated an entire line of action figures to. That's why we're using this Batman. Side note, Jim, if you wouldn't mind going back to your drawing board with a little more frequency, I think we'd all appreciate it. So in that original recording, I kind of forgot to say, co-founder of Image Comics, yes friends, Jim Lee, kind of a big deal. Something you'll notice about Lee's artwork as we go through these poses is how statuesque all of it is. Honestly, whether the characters are just standing there or in crazy motion, they all look like they could have been cut from marble. It's a really, really incredible look. 2 quick side notes. This is going to be similar to the Todd McFarlane video I did using the MAFEX Spider-Man, and this Batman is my first ever MAFEX action figure. Completely forgot to tell you that I'll link to all this stuff in the video description below, which means I didn't get in my consume joke, so consume! And of course, as is the thing with Toypixx, I'll be posing this guy using those Jim Lee reference images in service to toy photographers everywhere. And I'm starting this one simple with kind of a half crouching pose? Yeah, I think we can call it that. Alright, I've already swapped out Batman's hands so he's got the fists from the image. I've got the image open to my right so I can look at it as I'm trying to make this happen. You folks get to just see if I can make it happen. Let's see, now looking at the image, there's just a little twist at the waist and a little bend going on at the diaphragm. His head pops up like this. He's sort of looking not straight out, a little more like that. This arm is out like that, nothing too crazy. That looks like the fist is kind of in a bit. So I'll do that. Now, one of the fun things about this figure, by the way, is the way the cape is. It's going to be fun trying to figure out how to sort of get that out of the way. And I love MAFEX. I'm an unabashed MAFEX fan. But even I can recognize when maybe they could have done something a little differently. I like this cape a lot, but they needed wire right in the back middle. If they had that wire in a back middle, I think we'd be perfect, but I'm digressing from the mission of getting this to happen, and everybody knows Batman never diverts from the mission. So it looks like this arm's back just a bit, but out. I think we're good there. I think the arms are pretty well set. Now the legs. The one leg is really forward, so I'm going to use the drop down. And I'm going to do this. I can't see the foot on the image. I'm going to assume that he'd have the bent toe just like that. But again, I can't really see it. So this is just an assumption. He is standing on the gargoyle. His leg is probably out a little bit, actually. Just a touch. So it's more like that. Trying to watch the image and watch the phone as I'm going here. And this leg's probably just a little forward because he is crouched a bit. That hands, that arm still needs to go back a little more. Maybe even he's crouched like that, but let's angle him at the waist just a touch. So he's got a little more of that going on. I think we're pretty close. Now for the cape. This is going to be the tricky part. And I'll try and remember to put this image back in so we can see how it looks. It's difficult with this cape because you can't get it to go over the shoulder exactly as this image has it. And you don't see the cape going all the way out, so I can't figure out exactly where the end of it should go. Like the whole cape's not in the image. But I think we're kind of like that. This part of the cape is down here. This is why wired capes are so much fun. You get to just mess with them, and you get to shape them the way that you need them to go. And when it comes to working off reference art, chances are when you get plastic capes, they're not going to be the same shape that you're trying to get here. Now, something else that's going to be kind of tough with Batman is, I believe, the bottom parts where the spikes are on the cape. I think those are called scallops. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. But because there's not wire all through it, it's going to be difficult to get this part to really look exactly like it does in the image. If there were wire on each one, that would probably be overkill and there'd be a lot of money going down. But two, we'd be able to get this cape perfect. So let's look at that image again. If only it were this shoulder. This shoulder here, the cape, if I could get that a little more. Ooh, I think I'm about there. I think I almost got it. All right, I think, actually, let's try and go a little more forward at the waist, a little more up at the head. I think, ladies and gentlemen, we're pretty close. I think I've got this thing. Ooh. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And here's the comparison between the image and the figure. Great googly moogly! That one took a bit. Getting just a touch trickier with picture number 2. Alright, right off the bat, this Batman does not have a hand that's going to hold a batarang the way that it's shown in that image. But he does have a hand. Here, check this one out, that has several batarangs on it, if it'll focus. Hang on, there we go. So he also, in that image, it looks more like a fist. That looks quite a bit like a fist, so I'm substituting. Now, time to pose this bad boy up, or Bat Boy maybe. I need to stop with the jokes. Well, maybe not all of them. Okay, in this shot, I can see that he's bent at the waist, or turned at the waist. He's not so much bent. It's kind of a straight up lunge that he's pulling off. So there's that bend. Now, something to keep in mind whenever you're doing this for yourself, if the body turns that way and they're running in any kind of action, then this leg is the one that's forward. It's opposite, of course, if the body turns this way, then this leg is forward. So just something to keep in mind. Lee obviously knows that when it comes to drawing. So because he has that bent leg again in that image, I'm going to use the drop down hips. Looks like his foot's not straight back, so I'm going to do this. It's bent down there, just like that. Now the arm, this arm, the one furthest away from us, looks like it's down kind of like this. Looks pretty straight. Back a little more. The head actually looks like it's pretty much where it needs to be. I guess I got lucky with that positioning. Now, gotta love those MAFEX butterfly joints. It's going across there. I think he needs to turn a little bit more. And if I can't get him to turn much more at the waist, then I'll cheat a little bit and use the diaphragm joint. But it looks like I might have enough turn at the waist. Maybe we'll diaphragm it up a bit. I don't know. That's pretty extreme on the turn. I'll bring him back a touch. That's a little more like it. I want this arm to be down like that. This arm, in this picture, it's pretty much at a 90-degree bend, but he also has it so that you see this arm just above it, kind of like that. So I'm going to do that. His head's kind of down, but it shouldn't be that much down or that far down. There's that, okay. Maybe down a little more than that. These are all the little subtle nuances that are always in my brain when I'm setting this stuff up. It might not always be as necessary. I honestly don't use a lot of reference images, especially when it comes to a character like Batman, but I probably should, because oftentimes I just end up punching or kicking and doing pretty basic stuff with him. And Batman, he's not Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man needs all kinds of craziness. But Batman, he is a pretty acrobatic guy. He needs a little more than just your basic pow, thump, all that stuff. Now, I'm seeing this arm looks like it's covering the bat symbol a little more. Or is that the bat symbol needs to be turned a little more? Or is that just a case of not being able to do with the plastic what's being done with the image? Could be. That might be close to the actual deal. So we've got this now. The hands look right. The head needs to come up just a touch. Maybe right about there's pretty good. Angle it a bit that. No, yeah, not quite that much. Okay, so what's going on here that's throwing me off right now is the bat symbol in that image isn't seen at all. But if I really try and crank his arm up here, it's going to make it so that we don't see this arm the way that it appears in the image. So I think there are concessions I'm going to have to make. And I would rather have this arm doing that so that you can see the back arm doing what is happening in the picture than I would hide the bat symbol. I mean, he is Batman. I'm okay with the bat symbol showing. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to really crank that leg a little bit. Don't crank it so hard that you're going to break your MAFEX figures now, kids. Maybe, actually, it looks like maybe not quite so much. And then this leg, always you want to go kind of straight back with the pushing off legs. Looks like Lee's got a bit of a bend there, and this foot twisted out just a touch. So now what we've got is pretty close to what the image is. But what I need to do still is make some slight tweaks on the cape. And the cape, again, if it had that middle wire, would be absolutely phenomenal. The way that it's shaped here is going to be tough to get. But again, maybe some reference isn't quite as big a deal as other reference. Like I said, I think the Spider-Man stuff, looking at McFarlane's art, I think is huge when it comes to posing. When it comes to Batman, it's still insanely huge. I still think we should be checking out other artists until we really know how Batman moves. But it's not quite the same level as Spider-Man, especially since McFarlane ended up taking over. Now this cape, it seems like it's not staying how it needs to stay, almost like it's not attached as well as it should be underneath the cloak or underneath the material. But I don't know. I've never really had that problem, but I've also never really tried to mess with it like this. So I can't tell you. Okay, what I can tell you is maybe I can mess with the other wire that's in the back there to keep some things hidden. That's a little better. It's still not perfect, but it is a little better. So see, when it comes to Batman, when it comes to the MAFEX Batman, you've got to mess with all kinds of stuff. You've got to mess with the cape. You got to mess with, well, basically the cape. Everything else is pretty much standard with everything. So we've got this going. That's pretty close. I still think the head needs to come up just a touch. And now I think we've got it. I think we've got that Lee look. I mean, okay, MAFEX took care of that Lee look, but I think I've got pretty much as close to that pose as I'm going to get. And once again, the image versus the figure. And to get crazy, here's the third pick. I'll be posing up Jim Lee style. After that last pose, I had to prove that I could make the cape shoot straight up like that. Of course, I did it after that last pose, like I said. Now, with this one, I've already swapped out the hands. You can see in the image that he has kind of a rope that he's using, but his hand is a fist while he's using that rope. So he's got that fist going on there, and then the other hand is pretty basic other hand type stuff. So, time to get him flying through the air. Okay, for whatever reason, I'm enjoying starting at the waist, so let's turn a little bit this way. Just a touch. It doesn't need to be too crazy. Now his head is here, kind of looking ahead. Sort of like there is a bit of a crouch going on, but not tons of one. Now this hand going forward, this arm, is like this, but the hand itself is more like that. All right. So got kind of the torso, we've got that arm, and the head is pretty much good to go. Now this arm back here looks like it's pretty straight out, the one that's holding the rope. So I'm going to back it out a little bit that way so that it's back, pulled back from his shoulder a little bit, more like using the back part of the butterfly joint. And checking this. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much right there. A little more like that. His head in the image is nearly straight up and down. So right now, the angle is pretty much there, which would put this hand down here. That's right, folks, I am getting that picky. It's a little in front. And the thumb is actually over his cowl just a touch. But I don't know. Yeah, let's do that more with the shoulder joint and less with the actual elbow joint. There we go. Okay. So there's that. I want to turn the hand a little more like this. Okay, that arm is still back there as it should be. Yay, Batman. Don't worry. This is Batman, kids. This is the man right here. Now, I don't see the cape all that well. That's kind of the thing with Batman. It seems his cape is just all over the place, has a mind of its own. I don't hate it. I do see the cape on this side, though, is going kind of straight up and then over just a bit, like a bit of an arc. If this were a tougher material, I wonder a tougher material with a little more in the way of wire strength. I wonder what that would do. You can see I'm just trying to get this bend. This is the outside wire that I'm messing with right now. Okay, it's got that bend, but here's the deal. The cape that we see is over here. Over on this side, not the inside. Okay, that's a little better. Kind of hard to get it all in frame for you, but I am trying here. It still looks like it needs to come up that much. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now. All right. I'm using the thumb as kind of the guide right now. The thumb needs to be over his cowl ever so slightly, like we said earlier. Now, it looks like maybe I'm a little off on the waist, actually, so I'm going to tilt that. Then the diaphragm joint's a little more like that, perhaps. And now, does that change the head position at all? Just a little tiny bit. And remember, this isn't something that I do all that often, just because I feel like I know Batman pretty well, but when I'm looking at images like this, I'm constantly thinking, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do when it comes to the Bat. Okay, so we're going to leave the bottom or the top part of his body alone now. And I'm going to work on this a bit, on the lower part. I think those are also called legs. We don't have to just call it the lower part of the body. We can call them legs. Now this foot, oh man, this is going to be a trick, folks. Okay, so in the image, the foot itself is actually higher and turned like this a bit. And MAFEX does allow a little bit of a turn at the hip. But without the thigh joint, we can't get the big turn that probably would be ideal for this. But actually, the legs are about right now. This arm needs to come out a bit more. It's kind of like, have you guys ever done, like when you were in high school, I had a teacher that would have us draw an image that we were looking at, like kind of a reference. You'd look at the image as a reference, but you would graph the image. And so you'd graph the image, and then you would graph a piece of paper proportionally and draw what was in the squares on the original inside the corresponding square in the piece of paper, which was kind of crazy. It was cool, though. It was a lot of fun. But that's sort of what I'm thinking about as I'm working on bats here, is just that old school style of artwork. Okay, I think... Great googly moogly, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got it. Aside from, the limitations of the cape. But yeah, I think this is pretty close to what Jim Lee had. Let me try... Sorry, now I'm just getting picky. Bring it back down. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Whew, that one was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And once again, the image versus the figure. And now, it's bonus time! As a thank you to all of you for sticking around this long, and to me, because of those last couple poses, we're gonna use this guy along with Batman in a basic running shot. Whew! That'll make life easier for all of us. So, here it is. It doesn't get much more basic running than that. We're going to start this one with Nightwing. And yes, all the hacky jokes are in my head, and yes, I desperately want to use a few of them, but in the interest of keeping this channel PG-ish, I'm going to be good. Feel free to leave your own joke in the comments. Now, running poses are some of the easiest ones to pull off, believe it or not. As long as you just know how the figure works. As long as you know how people work. So there's just an ever so slight bend to the side there. It's not a lot. In fact, it's almost non-existent. I'm only putting that slight bend because in my head I know that's how it's supposed to work. But let's bring it back out. And he's kind of hunched forward a little bit, but that's because this leg, which we'll use the drop down, is really coming at you. Oh boy, we're almost talking, if I look at that picture, we're almost talking a 90-degree bend. And I'm not sure, let's see. Now, one of the things to always keep in mind when you're doing a running pose is the ankle. That's where you're going to get a lot of your balance. That's why when a figure has loose ankles, it's not great. It's one of the worst places for a figure to be loose. Now, he's obviously looking up. Okay, I want to bend him a little more up here at the waist. We'll do that. Now his body is, because the leg is kicking in here, you can see that his body is up and is twisted just a bit. It's just sort of not so obvious because the leg is doing a lot of the work. As far as visually, I mean. Now, this arm is back here a little more and a little closer to the body so we can get more of that look. Not quite so, there we go. It wasn't quite 90. Like looking at it, it didn't look like it was quite a 90-degree bend. So there's a little more here. And when I say that, I mean a 90-degree bend at the elbow. So a little more there. This head is going to be down a bit and straighter, kind of lined up with the midline of the blue on his costume. Okay, so that's closer. Now, as far as the arm, it's pretty straight out, honestly. Which makes things kind of easy. And then there's this back leg, which needs to come in. And you don't see the foot, so I'm not going to do anything with the foot. I'm going to keep it like that. And now is the part where things could get crazy. Because he's a little straighter up, and that's fine. That's probably going to work in our favor, actually. But you want to be really careful. I had that 90-degree bend. I might not need that 90-degree bend. You see the top of his head a little more. Now the trick here is going to be, once he's all set, making sure that the balance is key. So sometimes when you're using these images as reference, we're not going to be able to get them perfectly. I mean, obviously that's a thing because we're playing with plastic here. But one of the things might be that we have to do a little minor adjustment at the hip. We might need to bend the ankle a little differently than what we're looking at in the image. All that stuff to try and get it just right. But I think, actually, I'm going to put him back here a little more. I think we're pretty close. Ooh. I thought I had it. But this is what I mean by the ankle. This is why you don't want loose ankles. Because just really minor adjustments make all the difference. Whew. All right, we've got Grayson there. Now, I'm going to try Batman and hope, and you guys all know how this works because you've been doing this too. I'm going to see if I can do this so that Batman gets set up before Grayson falls. And I'm looking at Grayson, this elbow has to be a little higher. So what? I'm going to be the one that makes him fall. A little higher still. Kind of looks like I'm going to turn it just a touch. And some of these, sometimes you're going to find that the anatomy of the drawing isn't going to perfectly match what exactly goes on when it comes to people or when it comes to the figures. But there we go. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to lower his head. I know. Now I'm just getting picky, but if I'm going to use this stuff as reference, I want to make sure that I use it as reference. Not just get halfway there, but as much there as I can. All right, I think we've got it. I think, just for the sake of the camera, because I think the pose is right, I want him to face the camera just a little better. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Nightwing. Now, time for the Caped Crusader. One thing I'm noticing with Lee's work that I've never noticed before is he really likes to have Batman's cape way shooting up into the sky. Now, I'm going to move Grayson a little bit more out of the way because the cape is going to be a pain in the butt. We all know that the slightest touch on that guy is going to knock him over. So it's the same kind of thing with Batman here. He's twisted quite a bit more than Grayson, actually. I always feel weird calling him Grayson. But Damian Wayne's kind of made that a thing, I suppose. Regardless of all our feelings on Damian, I actually think it's kind of a good idea, by the way. I know not everybody agrees, but hey, it's the Batman. Of course he's going to have a kid. Keep looking back at Nightwing. Okay, Bats is tilted a little bit forward at the waist. And he's kind of the same as Nightwing, where we see the top of his head a bit. This is, I feel like if you guys are watching this, you're like, oh, this is Photo Dave's Bob Ross videos. Or these are Photo Dave's Bob Ross series. Maybe that's something I should work on with the naming on these things. So this arm is back a little more like that. The camera keeps wanting to go on Nightwing. Okay. Here, let's cover Nightwing a bit. That'll help. I think this needs to twist a little more this way at the waist. His head. Okay. Yeah, that's a little more like it. Now, the one thing that the MAFEX Batman's cape will not allow me to do, that I wish it would, is put it kind of more behind his shoulders. It does not allow me to put it behind his shoulders pretty much at all. So there are some limitations that are going to drive me a little crazy, but I have to get over it. So here's what we've got. This arm coming out a little this way. It's out. Another 90-degree bend, pretty close. And the cape is pointed up. So at least if I can get it to point up like Lee has it, or pretty close, it's kind of up and back actually, then maybe what I can do is make it so it's not so much in the way of the shoulder. And this part of the cape coming up, you still want it to go in the correct direction, which is this way more. Hard to see, but I've got it pretty close in the correct direction now. This side, though, ladies and gentlemen, this side's driving me crazy. I made it happen once. I can make it happen again. Or else my name's... I don't know how I was going to finish that. But this is both the joy and the irritation of the wired capes. So you're like, "No, man, it's awesome." And then you're going, "Oh no, I can't get it to do exactly what I want it to do. It's less awesome." I would say it's probably not seated in there as well as it should be. That might be a little bit of homework I'll have to do on this Batman. So I'm going to settle on that as much as I don't want to. Because of that, I'll pull that shoulder. His head's going to be straight on. And he's got kind of the same thing going. I don't know what I was thinking there. This leg, because his body was turned the other way. So of course I was going to try with the wrong leg. And then this leg is kicked off to the angle, like just a slight angle there. And you can't see that foot again, so we'll just kind of put that wherever, and if I need to use it for balance, I'll figure out how to use it for balance. So here's Bats. Pretty close. But I gotta make the ankle adjustment. Oh no, your knee's being a problem, Bats. Like I said, first MAFEX figure. He's been around for a bit. Okay. Legs good. Bring all this up just a touch. That cape's really annoying me. Is it annoying anybody else? Or is it just me talking about the cape that's annoying everybody else? Looking back at the image, I do want this arm to show better. There we go. All right, obviously that's not how the cape is in the picture, but dang it, at least now I can see the arm. Gotta twist Bats a little more at the waist. Right about like that. Ooh, I think we're about there. Bring his head up just a touch. So close, so close. He's got the same thing going on as Nightwing. Now, if I were trying to copy this picture exactly, I would have him more like this because his arm is just over Nightwing's head. But I think what I'm going to do instead, even though we're talking reference and all that good stuff, I'm going to have to be happy with close enough. This video is already much longer than any of you planned on. It's longer than I planned on. Now, it's about messing with his ankle a little bit. Because I think we've got the pose. Ooh, and his ankle is just, like I say, oldest MAFEX figure I have. So I might need to hit it with something to get that ankle a little more solid. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got it. We've got Bats and we've got Nightwing all set up, Jim Lee style. I'm going to shut off the camera real quick before somebody falls over. And now for the last time this video, the image versus the figures. That was fun. Okay, that was a serious posing session, but it's over. I had a blast really messing with the nuance and the articulation and just all the craziness that goes into trying to recreate Jim Lee art. Sometimes I was a little more successful than other times, but at least I got to show you guys using a lot of reference material to try and hit poses in case you're trying to come up with poses yourselves. So comment below and let me know, did this video help you out? Was it useful to just have on in the background while you were doing real work? Yeah, these are the questions the internet wants answers to. And that's that for this one, everybody. Thanks a ton for taking the time to check out this video, and as always, have fun and happy snapping. See ya. Holy crap, that was a lot of work. In my day, you wouldn't stand up your figures and mess with them like that and try and make them look all perfect. They were made out of sticks and stones, and you threw them at people so you could try and poke out their eyes. Yeah, those were the days.